The world seems to have forgotten dignity doesn't come from what you wear or what you drive. It comes from how you treat the person pouring your coffee when nobody's watching. My wife Mary used to say, "The measure of a man isn't what he owns. Silas, it's what he gives away when he's got nothing left to give." She's been gone 5 years now, but I still hear her voice in every act of kindness I see and every act of cruelty that breaks my heart. This story isn't about revenge. It's about remembering that every person you meet is carrying a burden you know nothing about. And sometimes, the smallest gesture of human decency can save a life. I hope this reminds you, like it reminded me, that we're never too old to choose kindness over bitterness, even when the world makes it hard. The bell above the door chimed the same note it had rung 42 years ago. Silas Rowan stopped just inside, letting the sound wash over him. His hand, weathered from 50 years swinging hammers and lifting 2x4s, released the door handle slowly, as if the whole memory might shatter if he moved too fast. Rosie's Diner looked right on the surface. Red vinyl booths cracked in all the familiar places. Black and white checkered floor, scuffed but swept clean. The old Wurlitzer jukebox in the corner played Patsy Cline singing "Crazy." Same as it always had. The smell of bacon grease and coffee hung in the air thick enough to taste. But something had gone wrong. Nobody looked up when he walked in. A waitress rushed past, eyes down, face tight as a clenched fist. The hostess stood behind her podium, thumbs moving across her phone screen, bathed in that cold blue glow. At the tables, people hunched over their plates like dogs guarding bones, eating fast, staring at screens, breathing the same air but living in separate worlds. Silas took it in with the slow attention of a man who'd learned that details saved lives on construction sites. His gaze moved past the young couple who sat across from each other without speaking, past the businessman talking loud into his cell phone, past the tired mother trying to quiet her crying baby while strangers shot her looks sharp as knives. Then he saw it. Table number 7. Window seat. Corner booth where the late September sun slanted through and painted everything gold. The table where he'd asked Mary Patterson to be his wife while she was still laughing at his terrible joke about a preacher and a carpenter. The table where she'd snorted sweet tea right through her nose and said yes anyway. Those yellow sunflowers still tucked behind her ear. A man sat there now. 40s maybe. Expensive watch catching the light. Phone pressed to his ear. His plate sat half-eaten while he waved his free hand, voice rising above the jukebox. "No, I said rare. This is medium rare. Don't these people understand plain English?" The busboy approached older fellow, 60 at least, with silver threading through his dark hair and hands that knew hard work. He reached for the water glass the businessman had knocked over, clear liquid spreading across the table like split shame. The businessman flicked his hand. "Didn't touch the busboy. Just dismissed him, the way you'd shoo a fly off your supper plate." The busboy's face stayed neutral. He wiped the spill, picked up the glass, moved to the next table without a word, shoulders carrying the weight of 1,000 small indignities. But his eyes met Silas's for one brief moment, and in that glance, Silas saw everything he needed to know. One working man to another. One invisible soul to another. A recognition that said, "I see you. You see me. We're the only ones who do." Silas nodded back, small, respectful. The hostess finally glanced up from her phone. Her eyes traveled over Silas' denim jacket with the torn shoulder seam, work boots that had been resoled more times than he could count, jeans clean but faded nearly white at the knees from years of kneeling on job sites. Her face settled into a look Silas had seen too often since Mary passed. The look that said, "You're old, you're poor, you don't matter." How many? Her voice carried all the warmth of a parking meter running out. Just one. His voice came out softer than he'd intended. rough from disuse. "Is table 7 open?" She glanced at the businessman, who showed no signs of leaving, despite all his complaining. "That guy's been there like an hour." A shrug. "Counter's open." Silas looked back at the window booth, at the place where Mary's laugh used to fill the air like church bells. At the spot where real love had started with an $8.47 steak dinner and two young people who had nothing in their pockets but were rich in all the ways that mattered. "I'll wait for that table, if it's all the same to you." He kept his tone even, polite, the way his father had taught him. "My wife and we had our first date there, long time back." For just a heartbeat, something human flickered across the girl's face, a softening around her eyes, like maybe she still remembered what it felt like to believe in romance, in history, in the notion that some places were sacred. Then the moment passed. "Sure. Whatever." Her eyes dropped back to her phone. Silas stood there, not quite ready to move on. His hand reached out almost of its own accord and touched the back of the vinyl booth at table 7. His fingertips remembered everything: the texture, the small L-shaped tear in the upper right corner, the way Mary used to trace invisible patterns on it while she dreamed out loud about opening her own little restaurant someday. "Yellow dress," he whispered to no one in particular. "Sunflowers in her hair. Summer of '78. Laughed so hard she snorted tea clear through her nose. "What?" The hostess looked up, irritated at being pulled from whatever she was reading. "Nothing, miss. Just remembering." The businessman at table 7 suddenly threw his napkin onto his plate. "You know what? Forget it. Just bring me the check. This place is a dive anyway." He yanked out his wallet, threw bills on the table, exact change, not a penny more, and stood up, still yakking into his phone, walked out without a glance at the busboy clearing his mess, without leaving so much as a dime for a tip. The old busboy appeared like a ghost. Cleared the table in smooth, practiced movements, the kind that come from decades of making yourself small and efficient. He picked up the cash counted for the meal, nothing extra, tucked it away because there was nothing else to tuck. Then he wiped down the vinyl booth with the same careful attention he'd have given a table that left him $20. Silas watched this quiet dignity and felt something crack open inside his chest. The hostess waved vaguely toward the counter. "Guy left. You can have 7 if you want. Or the counter. Don't matter to me." "Counter's fine," Silas said quietly. He couldn't sit at that table yet. Not alone. Not the first time back in 42 years. He eased himself onto a stool, his knees reminding him they weren't 30 anymore. The vinyl was patched with duct tape, cold even through his jeans. A waitress materialized in front of him. 30s. Would have been pretty if exhaustion hadn't carved lines around her eyes. Name tag read Maribel in neat block letters. Dark hair pulled back in a bun that was coming loose around the edges. Hands that trembled just slightly when she pulled out her order pad. She didn't smile, didn't make small talk, just stood there with her pen ready, waiting. "What can I get you?" Silas studied her face. Saw the fear living there. The way she held herself like someone expecting a blow. This was a woman who'd learned to make herself invisible to survive. "Coffee, black as you can make it, and whatever the special is today. Herb-crusted steak with roasted. That sounds just fine. I trust you, miss." Her pen stopped moving. She looked up at him, really looked like she was trying to figure out if he was making fun of her. "You trust me," and the question came out uncertain, fragile as blown glass. "Sure, do. Been eating food. Other folks cook for 68 years. Haven't died yet." He offered her a small smile. Gentle, grandfatherly. "Reckon you know what you're doing." Something happened to her face then, a crack in the armor she wore. Her eyes got shiny. She blinked fast, looked away, made a show of writing on her pad even though she'd already gotten it all down. "I'll get that coffee right out," she managed, voice barely above a whisper. As she turned away, Silas caught sight of someone watching from the kitchen doorway. A man, 40s, manager, judging by the cheap necktie and the shiny watch that probably cost more than the belt holding up his pants, dark hair slicked back with too much product, face that might have been handsome once, before something had turned it hard and mean. The manager's eyes narrowed as they fixed on Silas, jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth, studying him the way a fox studies a henhouse. Then he vanished back into the kitchen. Silas wrapped both hands around the coffee mug when Maribel brought it. The ceramic was warm, real, solid. He sipped slowly. The coffee tasted like it had been sitting on the burner too long. Bitter and burnt, but he drank it anyway, tasting nothing but remembering everything. This counter, this very spot, Mary bringing him endless refills during her shift, both of them so young and foolish and certain that love would be enough to build a life on. And Lord help him, it had been enough. For 43 years, it had been more than enough. Now she was gone to glory, and he was back here alone, and something in this place that used to feel like coming home had turned sour and poisonous. Silas didn't know what yet, but he'd spent half a century building houses and office buildings and shopping centers, and he knew the sound of a structure about to collapse, knew it in his bones. He also knew how to shore up failing foundations. He just needed to figure out what had broken in the first place. The coffee was terrible, but he ordered a second cup anyway. And when Maribel brought it, he left a $5 bill on the counter for a $2 coffee, and he made sure to look her in the eye when he said thank you. Her hands shook when she picked up that $5, and Silas knew the way you know things when you've lived long enough to recognize patterns that whatever was broken here, it was going to take more than money to fix. It was going to take the one thing this place had forgotten how to give: time, patience, and the kind of stubborn, quiet kindness that his Mary had spent her whole life teaching him. Well, he thought, settling in for the long haul. Guess I've got nothing but time these days. If you're reading this from your kitchen table, your favorite recliner, or maybe sitting in a diner somewhere with your own cup of coffee growing cold, I'd be honored to know. My mama used to say, "A story shared is a story that lives." Drop a word in the comments about where you're reading from, if you're of a mind to. Grant Holloway stood at the threshold between the dining room and kitchen, arms crossed over his chest, watching the old man at the counter nurse that coffee like it was medicine. Denim jacket, shoulder seam torn clean through, duct-taped vinyl stool, hands wrapped around the mug with the careful grip of someone who'd spent a lifetime holding tools that could take your fingers off if you weren't paying attention. Grant's left eye twitched. That jacket, that specific shade of sun-faded blue, worn soft at the elbows. His father had owned one just like it. Same color, same wear pattern. Thomas Holloway coming home from the construction site. Sawdust caught in his graying hair. Smelling of honest sweat and pine lumber. That same careful way of moving, like the whole world was made of glass and one wrong step would shatter everything. Grant's hands balled into fists so tight his knuckles went white. 3 weeks. His daddy had lasted 3 weeks after they fired him. Hart gave out on a loading dock at the temp agency, begging for day labor at 60 years old, gone before the ambulance could navigate Friday afternoon traffic. And men like this men in worn-out jackets who still said please and thank you, like those words paid bills they just kept on existing. Kept taking up space. Kept pretending dignity mattered more than dollars. Grant pushed through the kitchen door hard enough to make it bang against the wall. The smell hit him first. Onions caramelizing on the flat top. Beef searing. The ever-present undercurrent of fryer grease that never quite washed out of the air no matter how many times they ran the exhaust fans. Luis Vargas stood at the grill, plating up the special. The steak looked perfect crust like mahogany. juice running pink when he cut into it to check. Fresh rosemary sprig laid across the top like Luis was running some fancy downtown restaurant instead of a Georgia highway diner. That for the counter, Grant's voice came out flat. Dead. Sí, jefe, es perfecto. Luis smiled at his handiwork, that stupid pride lighting up his weathered face. Grant stared at the plate, at all that care, at all that wasted effort on someone who didn't deserve it. Something cold settled in his chest and made the decision for him. Throw it out. Luis's hands froze mid-air. Pardon. You heard me. Trash it. But, senor, I don't Did I ask you a question? Luis's hands started shaking as he picked up that beautiful plate, walked it over to the garbage bin like a man walking to a funeral. The steak hit the trash with a wet slap that made the prep cook look up from his station. Grant reached into the bin himself, pulled out 3 pieces of reject meat edges burnt black as tar, gristle showing through where the knife had missed. The kind of cuts they normally gave to whoever wanted to take scraps home for their dog. Use these instead. Luis's mouth opened. Closed. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Senor, Grant, I cannot serve this to... Grant stepped close. Close enough to smell the old man's nervous sweat mixing with the kitchen heat. You want to keep this job? The "sí, senor" barely made it past Luis's lips. Then plate it up, make it look nice, hide what needs hiding. Luis whispered something in Spanish, crossed himself, reached for the reject meat with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The kitchen door swung open behind them. Maribel walked in for her pickup, order pad clutched in one hand. Her eyes landed on those burnt, gristled pieces of meat Luis was trying to arrange on a clean, white plate, trying to make garbage look like supper. All the color drained from her face. 7 years ago, she'd watched a man die because she kept her mouth shut when she should have screamed. Maribel shoved through the supply closet door and pressed her back against the metal shelving. Her chest jerked in and out, trying to remember how breathing worked. The plate sat on the break room table, waiting for her to carry it out, waiting for her to serve poison to a stranger. She yanked her phone from her apron pocket. The screen lit up Diego and Sofia grinning back at her, gap-toothed and innocent. 8 and 5, her whole world in 2 faces. Her thumb moved on its own, opened the browser. The search bar filled itself from memory. Harold Mitchell. Obituary Savannah. She'd looked it up 500 times, maybe more. The article loaded, words she'd memorized like scripture. Harold Mitchell, 76, passed unexpectedly at Rosie's Diner on Friday evening. Survived by his wife Dorothy of 52 years, 3 children, 8 grandchildren. The memory came in grainy black and white, shaky like old 8mm film her daddy used to project on the living room wall. Table 7. February. Cold rain hammering the windows. Friday dinner rush. Every seat full. Harold Mitchell sitting alone with tomato soup and crackers, his face going gray. Hand clutching his chest, the spoon clattering against the bowl, soup sloshing over the rim onto the tablecloth. Young Maribel, 28. New. Still thought managers knew best, taking a step forward. Sir, are you feeling all right? The old manager grabbing her elbow, fingers digging in hard enough to leave marks she'd find later. Indigestion. Don't make a scene. Friday night, we're packed. But shouldn't we call... You want to keep this job? Harold, slumping sideways, his head hitting the tile floor. That sound like a melon dropped from shoulder height. Someone finally screaming. Paramedics arriving 23 minutes later. Savannah traffic. Friday night. Rain. The younger one checking Harold's neck for a pulse, looking up at his partner, shaking his head. Dorothy Mitchell arriving still wearing her church auxiliary dress, collapsing against the side of the ambulance, her wail cutting through the rain like a knife through butter. Maribel's phone screen blurred. She blinked hard, scrolled down to the other article she kept saved. Dorothy Mitchell, widow of Harold Mitchell, has filed wrongful death suit against... She'd never been able to finish reading that one. Her phone showed Diego and Sofia again when the screen dimmed. 2 kids who needed their mama to keep this job. 2 kids who'd lose their apartment if she got fired. But if she stayed quiet again. If she let another person. Her hand cramped around the phone. She pulled her order pad from her apron, tore off a page, found a pen. The first word came out so shaky she couldn't read it. Started over, pressed harder. Don't eat the steak. Something is wrong with it. Please don't say anything. M. Silas cut into the meat. The knife slid through too easy. Meeting no resistance, he lifted a piece on his fork. The color was off, burnt black on one edge, gray-brown on the other, gristle showing through where the garnish didn't quite cover it. He set the fork down without tasting, pushed the plate away, just 2 inches, not dramatic, just away. Sipped his burnt coffee instead. Maribel appeared with a water pitcher, a folded napkin in her other hand. Fresh napkin for you, sir. Her voice held steady, but barely. The water in the pitcher rippled from her shaking. She set the napkin down by his coffee cup. Silas looked at her face first. Read everything written there, the terror and the desperate hope that he'd understand what she couldn't say out loud. He unfolded the napkin slow and careful. Read the note inside. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes, a recognition, a knowing. He folded the note back up, slipped it into his jacket pocket. Looked up at her, nodded once, slow and deliberate. I see you. I understand. Her shoulders dropped half an inch. The breath she'd been holding since yesterday finally let go. Miss, I'm thinking I'm not as hungry as I thought. Mind wrapping this up for me? Of course, sir. He pulled out his wallet, cracked leather held together with a rubber band that had gone brittle with age. Extracted a $20 bill. Series 1995. The kind folks keep because somebody special gave it to them once. The meal came to $16.50. Sir, your change. Keep it for your trouble. He stood, buttoned his jacket against the evening chill he'd face outside. As the collar shifted, Maribel caught a glimpse of something embroidered on the inside, faded but still readable in pale blue thread. S.R. Love always. M.R. M.R. Mary Rowan, the woman who'd trained Maribel 10 years back. The silver-haired lady with the locket who always said, Sugar, you treat every customer like they're your own kin, because you never know they might be someone's last memory of kindness in this world. Maribel's breath stopped in her throat. Sir? The word came out strangled. Did you know Mary Rowan? Silas paused mid-button, turned back. Know her? Something gentled in his weathered face. Well, I'll be. She was my wife. Miss, how'd you know Mary? She trained me when I started here. Taught me everything about seeing people right. The gentleness deepened into something quieter. Something that looked like peace and pain holding hands. Then she taught you well. I can tell. Grant's voice cut through the moment like an axe through kindling. Everything all right over here? He crossed the dining room in long strides, false concern plastered across his face. Silas met his eyes. Calm. Level as a carpenter's square. No trouble at all. Just realized my stomach's acting up. Old age catches up with you. Getting this wrapped to take home. Grant's gaze dropped to the untouched steak. Something wrong with the food. No, sir. Just me. Stomach's been giving me fits lately. Grant studied him, looking for cracks in the story, for anything that would give him permission to do what he wanted. Silas's face gave him nothing but elderly weariness and polite apology. Well then, Grant's smile never touched his eyes. Y'all come back now. I reckon I will. Silas tipped his head respectful-like and walked toward the exit. Grant's hand shot out, fingers wrapping around Maribel's wrist, not hard enough to bruise, hard enough to own. "What did y'all talk about?" "Nothing." He asked about Mary, the lady who used to work here years back. "Mary's been dead 5 years. He was her husband." Something flickered across Grant's face, fast as summer lightning. Something that might have been shame trying to break through concrete. Then it died. "Don't get chatty with customers. This isn't a social club." He let go, walked away. Maribel stood there, wrist still feeling the pressure of his grip. Through the window, she watched Silas walk to his old pickup truck. A white dog barked happy from the passenger seat, tail thumping against the bench. Silas opened the door, scratched behind the dog's ears, pulled out a phone, the old flip kind her grandfather used to carry, dialed, put it to his ear. His lips moved. She couldn't hear through the glass, but she could see his face changing. He was making a decision that would change everything. And somehow, Maribel knew with the bone-deep certainty of someone who'd watched a man die from her silence that nothing in this diner would ever be the same. The motel room smelled like industrial cleaner trying to hide decades of cigarette smoke. Silas sat at the small table by the window, styrofoam cup of lobby coffee going cold beside his elbow. His old laptop hummed on the fake wood veneer surface. Aurora stretched across the bed, head on the pillow like she owned the place. A knock rattled the thin door. "Delivery for Rowan." Silas opened up. Young fellow, maybe 25, holding a manila envelope thick as a Sunday paper. Silas took it, pulled a $10 bill from his wallet. The courier's eyes went wide. "Thank you, sir. Appreciate it." The door clicked shut. Silas settled back at the table, opened the envelope. Personnel file spilled out. Holloway, Grant Michael, typed across the tab. He spread the pages, started reading. Born 1983, Savannah Memorial. Father Thomas Holloway. Construction foreman. Mother Linda Holloway. Schoolteacher. Georgia Southern University. Business degree. His finger traced down to employment history. Regional manager, Whitfield Industries, 2009 to 2015. Next line stopped him cold. Terminated. Suspected theft, Whitfield Industries. The name sat in his gut like a stone. He'd owned that company. Bought it in 2018 when it was drowning in mismanagement. Cleaned house, sold it 3 years later for twice what he'd paid. He flipped to the investigation notes. 15,000 missing from petty cash. Grant Holloway had access. No hard evidence. Terminated on circumstantial evidence and recommendation from Roger Dalton, VP Operations. Next page made his jaw tighten. 2019 internal audit found the discrepancy traced to Roger Dalton. Dalton confessed to embezzlement. Grant Holloway innocent. Termination wrongful. Settlement offered $0. Subject did not pursue legal action. Whereabouts unknown. Silas leaned back. The cheap chair creaked under his weight. "So they fired you for something you didn't do. And by the time they figured it out, you were already gone." He pulled out another sheet. Newspaper obituary. Yellowed at the edges. Thomas Holloway, 60, passed away October 14, 2015. Cardiac arrest. Survived by wife Linda, son Grant. Silas picked up his phone, opened the calculator. Grant's termination, September 23, 2015. Thomas Holloway's death. October 14, 2015, 21 days. His father lasted 3 weeks after losing his job. Silas stared at the water-stained ceiling tiles. "You think they killed him? And maybe they're not wrong." Aurora lifted her head, whined soft in her throat. "I know, girl." He reached over, scratched her graying muzzle. "I know." The studio apartment had walls thin enough to hear Mrs. Washington's television through the plaster. Maribel stood at her 2-burner stove, one frying pan heating, 4 eggs left in the carton. The refrigerator rattled behind her. Inside, half-gallon of milk 3 days from expiring. Ketchup. Butter dish scraped nearly clean. She cracked all 4 eggs into the pan, watched them sizzle and pop, divided them onto 2 plastic plates, 2 eggs for Diego, 2 for Sophia, none for herself. Diego sat up on the pull-out couch that served as their bed, rubbing sleep from his eyes. 8 years old, going on 30. Already learning to read the things his mother didn't say. Mom, you eating? Had a big supper last night. Baby, you eat up. He looked at her with those 2 knowing eyes, didn't argue. He'd learned. Sophia climbed into her lap, 5 years old and still believing what her mama told her. Mama, when's payday? Friday. Sweet pea. 2 more days. Can we get pizza from Marco's? We'll see. Baby girl. They both knew what "we'll see" meant. A knock rattled the door. Maribel set Sophia down, crossed the cramped space. Mrs. Louise Carter stood in the hallway, 72 years of dignity wrapped in a flowered house dress despite it being Tuesday morning. She held a paper grocery sack. Morning, sugar. Was cleaning out my pantry. Thought you might could use some of this. Maribel looked in the bag. Bread, jar of peanut butter, 3 cans of tomato soup, bunch of bananas going spotted but still good. Her throat closed up tight. Mrs. Carter, I can't take hush now, child. The old woman's hand touched her cheek, warm and papery soft. You helped me with my grocery bags last week when my hip was throwing a fit. This is just neighborly. She pressed the bag into Maribel's arms. The good Lord provides, honey. Sometimes he just uses neighbors with full pantries. Mrs. Carter shuffled back toward her apartment, moving slow, that bad hip making her list to one side. Maribel closed the door, leaned her forehead against it, something hot pressed behind her eyes. Mom. Diego's voice, worried. She turned, wiped her face with the back of her hand. I'm okay, baby. Just grateful. She carried the bag to her narrow counter, pulled out the bread, made peanut butter sandwiches for Diego and Sophia's school lunch, wrapped them in paper towels because the sandwich bags had run out 3 days ago. Still didn't eat anything herself. 6:30 that evening. Silas pushed through the diner door. The bell chimed its familiar note. Maribel looked up from refilling the coffee station. Their eyes met across the dining room, held for a beat. An understanding passed between them without words. Silas took his usual stool at the counter. Just coffee tonight. Maybe a piece of pie if you've got any left. Maribel nodded, poured the coffee without asking how he took it. Her hand was steadier today. Through the office window, Grant sat at his desk, computer screen washing his face blue-white. His fingers moved across the keyboard. Search bar filled with Silas Rowan, Savannah, Georgia. Results loaded. Hundreds of them. Too many. Construction workers, insurance agents, a Baptist preacher in Valdosta, a retired postal worker in Brunswick. Grant's jaw clenched. He tried another search, added wealthy to the terms. Still nothing useful. He slammed the laptop closed harder than necessary. The kitchen door swung open. Luis emerged carrying a small plate warm bread, pat of butter melting on top. Walked straight to Silas. On the house, senor? Silas looked up. Well, that's mighty kind. Thank you. Luis smiled, creases forming around his eyes. You remind me of my papa. He was a good man, built houses his whole life. You got the same. He gestured at Silas's face, searching for the English word. The same, cara, face. I hope that's a compliment. Si, is the highest compliment. Luis headed back to the kitchen, and for the first time in 3 years, he was humming under his breath. Grant stood at his office window, watching this exchange. His hands opened and closed at his sides. opened, and closed. He'd been running this place 5 years. Nobody ever brought him fresh bread. Nobody said he reminded them of anyone worth remembering. The old man had been coming 2 days. 2 days, and already the staff looked at him different, softer, like he'd given them permission to be human again. Grant picked up his cell phone, dialed a number he'd sworn he'd never use. 2 rings. Dalton Investigations. I need a full background check. Name's Silas Rowan, Savannah area, approximately 70 years old. That'll run you about, I don't care what it costs. I need it yesterday. He ended the call. Through the window, Silas sipped his coffee slow and easy, like a man with nowhere to be and all the time in the world to get there. Grant caught his own reflection in the dark computer screen, hollow-eyed, jaw clenched so tight his molars ached. The face of someone who'd forgotten what it felt like to be at peace. A question wormed its way into his mind. Unwanted and persistent. Would his father even recognize what he'd become? Grant sat at his desk. Cash register printouts spread across the scarred surface like evidence at a trial. Numbers marched down the page in neat columns, black ink on white paper telling the story of every transaction, every dollar that passed through his restaurant. He found what he needed. Maribel's till count from yesterday evening, her signature at the bottom in that careful cursive, the capital M with its little flourish. Starting cash, $200. Sales, $1,847.50. Expected total, $2,047.50. Actual, count $1,997.50. Shortage, $50. $50. Normal shrinkage. Wrong change given. Coins dropped and rolled under equipment. The cost of doing business with human beings instead of machines. Grant picked up his ballpoint pen, clicked it twice, listening to the spring mechanism. Drew a single line through the numbers on Maribel's actual count. Wrote above it in his own hand $1,947.50. The shortage now read $100. He opened his computer, pulled up the security camera files, found yesterday's footage timestamp showing Maribel counting her till at 11 p.m., after the kitchen had closed, after the other staff had clocked out and gone home. He changed the timestamp to 9 p.m., prime dinner rush. Other employees visible in the frame made it look like she'd had opportunity to pocket cash while people moved around, distracted by the chaos of Friday night service. His hand stayed steady as he saved the altered file. This was just business, protecting his investment, maintaining order. He closed the laptop, leaned back in his chair. Let's see how noble you are when your kids need to eat. 6:30. Dinner rush in full swing. Every table occupied. The dining room humming with conversation and the clatter of silverware on plates. Maribel balanced a tray loaded with sweet tea and water glasses, weaving between tables like she'd done 1,000 times before. Smile, don't spill, keep moving, stay invisible. Grant emerged from his office, printout gripped in his right hand. His dress shoes clicked deliberate and slow against the checkerboard tile. Maribel! She set down the tray at table 12, turned to face him. I need you in the office. Now. I'm in the middle of now. The single word dropped like a judge's gavel. Final. No appeal. She followed him through the dining room, but he didn't head toward the back hallway where his office waited in privacy. He stopped. Dead center of the dining room, right where every customer, every staff member, every set of eyes could see. Turned on his heel, held up the printout like a prosecutor presenting evidence. Your till was short last night, $100. Conversations died mid-sentence. Forks froze halfway to mouths. The whole room watching now. Couldn't look away if they wanted to. Maribel's face went cold, then hot, blood rushing to her cheeks. What? No, sir. I counted 3 times. There was only Only 50. So you admit there was a shortage? Yes, but I thought maybe someone made a mistake with. You thought you could skim a little here and there and I wouldn't notice. Her hands started trembling. She pressed them together, squeezed hard enough to hurt. I didn't take anything. I would never. Then where's the money? Maribel? I don't know. Maybe the register miscounted. Or someone gave wrong change. The only mistake here was me trusting you. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her throat had seized up, wouldn't let air through. Customers stared or looked away. Embarrassed for her, but not enough to speak up, never enough to actually say something. Luis pushed through the kitchen doors, wooden spatula still clutched in his hand, concern written across his weathered face. Senor, Grant, Maribel is a good woman. She would not steal. Grant whipped around. Did anyone ask your opinion? Luis's mouth snapped shut. His knuckles went white around the spatula handle, then loosened. He took a step backward into the kitchen's shadow. Grant turned back to Maribel, raising his voice so it carried to every corner of the dining room. We've had theft problems before. I tried being understanding, giving second chances. But apparently that was a mistake. Tears spilled down Maribel's face, hot and unwanted. She couldn't stop them, couldn't blink them back fast enough. Mascara started running, leaving dark tracks. You've got two choices. Pay back the $100 right this minute, or you're fired. Her voice came out broken, barely recognizable. I don't have $100. Then pack your. Excuse me, son. Every head in the diner swiveled. Silas stood from his counter stool, coffee cup still sitting where he'd left it. He set his napkin down gentle, made no sudden moves, walked over slow, his work boots soft against the tile, covered the distance between counter and confrontation like a man with all the time in the world. This doesn't concern you, sir. Grant's voice carried a warning edge. I believe that $100 might be mine. Grant's eyes narrowed to slits. Yours? Yes, sir. I gave this young lady a $100 bill yesterday. Asked her to break it for me so I'd have smaller bills for the week. Then I got distracted, happens more these days, I'm afraid, and walked out without collecting my change. Grant stared at him, searching for the crack in the story, the tell that would expose the lie. Is that true? Maribel looked at Silas. His face remained calm as Sunday morning, eyes steady, giving her permission to take the lifeline he was throwing. She understood. Yes. Her voice scraped out hoarse and raw. Yes, I should have reminded you. Sir, that was my fault? I'm sorry. Silas pulled out his wallet, the cracked leather held together with its brittle rubber band, extracted a $100 bill. Old and soft from years in circulation. Series 1985, back when Reagan was president and gas cost $1 a gallon. He extended it toward Grant. Hate to cause a fuss. My memory's not what it used to be. Can't keep track like I did when I was your age. Grant took the bill. His hand shook not from fear but from rage burning white-hot through his chest. Rage at being outmaneuvered by an old man in a torn jacket. Well, the word forced itself through clenched teeth. Misunderstanding cleared up then. He spun on his heel, stalked back to his office. The door didn't quite slam, but it closed hard enough that the framed business license on the wall rattled. Conversations resumed slowly. Quiet at first, then building back to normal volume. Someone laughed nervously. Silverware clinked against plates again. Maribel stood frozen. Tears still wet on her face, her whole body shaking like she'd been pulled from ice water. Silas touched her elbow, barely there, light as a bird landing. You all right, miss? She nodded. Couldn't trust her voice yet. Why don't you take yourself a minute? I'll be out by my truck if you need anything. He walked toward the exit, unhurried, like nothing unusual had just happened. Maribel watched him go, then looked at Grant's office. Through the window she could see him standing with his back to the door, shoulders hunched, both hands flat on his desk like he was trying to keep the earth from spinning off its axis. Luis emerged from the kitchen, crossed to her, put his weathered hand on her shoulder. "You okay, mija?" She nodded, still unable to speak past the lump lodged in her throat. "That man." Luis gestured toward the door where Silas had just exited. "He's one of the good ones, like the old days." Maribel wiped her face with the back of her hand, smearing mascara across her cheek. "I need—" Her voice cracked. "I need a minute." She pushed through the back door into the alley. Cool evening air hit her face. She gasped once, twice, her chest heaving like she'd run a mile uphill. The door opened behind her. Silas stood there, Aurora sitting patient beside him on her leash, the white dog's tail swishing back and forth. "You followed me out. Wanted to make sure you were all right." Something inside her broke open. The sobs came hard and ugly, her nose running, breath hitching, unable to stop any of it. Silas pulled a folded handkerchief from his pocket white cotton, ironed with creases sharp enough to cut, and handed it to her. She pressed it to her face. It smelled like Tide detergent and something else, something that reminded her of her grandfather before he passed. "Why?" The word came out muffled against the cloth. "Why would you do that? You could get in trouble. He could ban you." "He could, but he won't." "How do you know?" "Because curious men don't slam doors. They crack them open to peek through, and that boy's dying to figure out who I am." She looked up at him, mascara streaked, eyes red and swollen. "Who are you?" Silas smiled, sad and gentle. "Just an old man who misses his wife something fierce." Fresh tears came. Different now. Not shame. Something else. "I need this job." The words tumbled out fast, desperate. "My kids. I've got Diego and Sofia. 8 and 5. If I lose this job, we lose our apartment. And I can't—" "I know," he said quiet. "I know. Then why risk it? You don't even know me. Don't need to. Saw someone who needed help. That's enough." Through the kitchen window, Grant stood watching them, his face pressed close to the glass, hands balled into fists at his sides, and in his pocket. His phone buzzed with an incoming text. From Dalton Investigations. "Background check complete. You won't believe this." Silas leaned against his truck. One boot crossed over the other. Aurora sat beside him, panting soft in the humid evening air. The parking lot lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in sickly yellow. Maribel dabbed at her face with his handkerchief, her breathing finally evening out. The sobs came further apart now, losing their grip. How many people in there are decent folks just trying to get by? She looked back at the diner through the grimy window. Louise at the grill, Jenny the hostess counting receipts at the register, Ramon the busboy wiping down tables with his slow, careful movements. Most of them, I reckon. Luis sends half his paycheck to his family back in El Salvador. Jenny's saving every penny for community college. Ramon's boy is in prison. He works double shifts to pay the lawyer. Silas nodded, scratched behind Aurora's ears. "Think they'd stand with you if things got harder. I don't know. Everyone's scared of losing what little they got." Fear's a powerful thing. Silas watched a moth circle the parking lot light, drawn to something that could burn it. But so's watching someone find their backbone. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I plan to keep coming here. Every single day. Keep being kind. Keep tipping fair. Eventually, folks remember what it feels like to be treated like they matter." Maribel stared at him like he'd suggested flying to the moon. "That's your whole plan. You'd be surprised how much damage kindness does to a mean system." She almost smiled. Almost. "What about Grant? He's not going to just stand by." "Let him come. I've known plenty of angry men in my time. Doesn't scare me none. He could ban you from coming back. Then I'll find another way to help. But I don't think he will." "Why not?" Silas looked through the window at Grant's office. The manager stood at his desk, phone pressed to his ear, face tight as a clenched fist. Because he hasn't figured out who I am yet. And curious people don't slam doors shut. They crack them open just enough to peek through. Maribel folded the handkerchief into a small square, tried to hand it back. Keep it. I got a drawer full at home. She clutched it in her fist. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This might get worse before it gets better. I know, but at least I won't be going through it alone. Silas smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. No, ma'am. You surely won't. She walked back toward the diner, stopped at the door, turned around. Silas, your Mary was lucky. Having you. His throat went tight. He nodded. Couldn't trust his voice. She disappeared inside. Silas stood there in the parking lot, Aurora whining soft beside him. He looked down at her. I know, girl. I miss her too. Every blessed day, but she'd want us right here, doing exactly this. He climbed into the truck. Didn't start the engine. Just sat watching the diner through the windshield, watching the tired people inside going through their motions, still showing up despite everything. Mary used to say the world breaks everyone eventually, but some folks get stronger in the broken places. He hoped to heaven she was right. The engine turned over smooth when he finally twisted the key, purred like a satisfied cat. He drove away into the Savannah night. Next morning, 5:45, still dark outside, streetlights reflecting off the dew-wet pavement. Maribel stood in the employee break room, coffee pot gurgling and spitting as it brewed. The smell filled the cramped space, bitter and strong enough to wake the dead. Luis came through the door first, his thermos tucked under one arm, saw her, nodded. Morning. Mija. Morning. Luis. Jenny pushed in next. 19 years old with a college textbook poking out of her backpack, eyes puffy from studying until midnight, Ramon shuffled in last, moving slower than usual, that bad hip making him wince with each step. They all reached for their mugs, the same wordless routine they'd performed together for years. Maribel cleared her throat. Can I talk to y'all for a minute? They turned, cautious as deer hearing a twig snap. Yesterday. She stopped, started over. Yesterday, Grant tried to fire me for something I didn't do. Luis set down his thermos with a hollow thunk. We know. We all saw. That old man saved you, Jenny said. The one with the dog, with that $100. His name's Silas Rowan. And yes, he did. Maribel gripped her coffee mug hard enough to feel the heat through the ceramic. But next time it might be one of you, and there might not be anyone around to help. Silence settled heavy in the small room. So what are you saying? Ramon's English came out thick, weighted with his accent. I'm saying we need to cover each other. No more letting Grant pick us off one by one because we're too scared to speak up. Ramon shifted his weight, grimacing as his hip protested. And if we all lose our jobs, then we lose them standing together instead of falling alone. Luis crossed his arms over his chest. What about Silas? He coming back? He said he would. Every day. You trust him. Maribel thought about the handkerchief still in her apron pocket, about Mary's embroidery inside Silas's jacket, about how he'd listened to her confession about Harold Mitchell without a trace of judgment in his eyes. Yeah, I trust him. Jenny chewed her bottom lip. Grant's going to be watching us now, all of us, like a hawk. Then let him watch. Maribel's voice came out stronger than she felt inside. We're not doing anything wrong, just our jobs, just treating each other decent. They stood there, 4 people running on fumes and hope, barely keeping their heads above water. Luis extended his hand palm down over the scratched break room table. For each other, no matter what comes. Maribel laid her hand on top of his. Jenny added hers, hesitant but firm. Ramon paused, then placed his weathered, work-scarred hand on the pile. For each other, they said together. The coffee pot beeped its finish. They broke apart, poured their cups, headed to their stations. But something had shifted, something fragile as spun glass but real as the floor under their feet. Through the break room door window, Grant's office sat dark and empty. He hadn't arrived yet. When he did, he'd be walking into a different restaurant than the one he'd left. He just didn't know it yet. 9:30 that night. Grant's apartment. He sat on his couch in the dark, unable to make himself reach for the light switch. Bottle of Kentucky bourbon sat on the coffee table, full, seal unbroken. He stared at it like it might jump up and bite him. On his phone screen glowed the text from Dalton Investigations. He'd read it 20 times already. Couldn't stop reading it. Silas Rowan, age 68. Net worth estimated $847 million, primary holdings. Rowan Holdings, LL. See real estate development, commercial properties, construction companies. Notable, purchased Whitfield Industries, 2018 restructured. Sold 2021, married, Mary Ellen Rowan. Deceased 2020. No criminal record. $847 million. Nearly $1 billion, more money than Grant could wrap his mind around in 10 lifetimes. The old man sitting at the counter in his torn jacket and resoled boots, nursing burnt coffee like it was fine wine. Worth almost $1 billion. And he'd bought Whitfield Industries, the company that destroyed Grant's father, the company that killed him as sure as if they'd put a gun to his head. Grant's hands went numb. He set the phone down before he dropped it. Picked up the framed photo from the side table. His father in that construction helmet, grinning at the camera like the world was full of possibility. He knew. Dad. Grant's voice cracked in the empty apartment. He knew what they did to you. To us. And he came here anyway. Pretending to be nobody. Watching me. The bourbon bottle caught light from the street lamp outside, amber liquid glowing. Grant reached for it, his fingers wrapped around the neck. Cool glass, smooth, promising oblivion for a few hours at least. He unscrewed the cap. The smell hit him sweet and burning all at once. Lifted the bottle to his lips. Stopped. Set it back down. His phone buzzed. Text from his mother. 2 weeks since I heard from you, honey. Getting worried. Please call when you can. Love you so much. He stared at the words, love you so much. When was the last time he'd said those words back to her? When had he stopped being the kind of man who could Grant stood? Walked to the window, looked down at the parking lot 3 floors below. A faded blue Ford pickup sat in the visitor spaces. Engine running. Headlights cutting through the darkness. Silas sat behind the wheel, Aurora beside him, both of them just sitting there, not leaving, just watching Grant's apartment building. Their eyes met across the distance and the darkness, and Grant understood with ice-cold certainty that this wasn't about money or power or revenge. This was about being seen, really seen by someone who knew exactly what poison he'd let grow inside him, someone who wouldn't look away. 1 week later, 7 in the morning, breakfast shift. Silas sat at the counter, same stool he'd claimed as his own, coffee steaming in front of him, black as road tar. Louise emerged from the kitchen without being asked. Set down a plate, fresh biscuits, butter pooled in the center melting golden, still warm from the oven. On the house, senor. Silas looked up. Well, that's mighty kind. Much obliged. Louise smiled, actual warmth reaching his eyes for the first time in years. Went back to the kitchen humming Cielito Lindo under his breath. Jenny walked past on her way to seat the morning regulars. Stopped. Morning. Mr. Rowan. Just Silas. Miss. Morning. Silas. Her smile looked real. Meant. Ramon came through carrying a rack of clean water glasses, moving slow but steady, caught Silas's eye. Buenos dias, señor. Morning to you, Ramon. How's that hip treating you? Eh? Ramon shrugged. Better some days than others. But I'm still walking, so I don't complain to the good Lord. Silas watched him go, noting the way the old man's shoulders didn't carry quite so much weight anymore. At table 12, an elderly couple sat working through pancakes and bacon. The husband must have been 75 if he was a day watched Silas leave a $10 tip on a $6 breakfast tab. Next morning, that same old man left $5 instead of his usual $2. At table 6, a woman in a business suit saw Silas say, "Please" and "Thank you" every single time staff came near. Saw him look Jenny in the eye when she refilled his coffee. Her next visit, she did the same. Actually spoke to the waitress like a human being instead of furniture. It spread like warmth through cold metal. Slow. Almost invisible if you weren't watching close. The staff started making eye contact with customers. Luis hummed while he flipped eggs. Jenny stopped checking her phone every 30 seconds. Ramon walked taller, that permanent slump in his shoulders easing bit by bit. Grant saw all of it from his office window. Watched his restaurant transform into something he didn't recognize. Watched the disease of kindness infect his carefully maintained order. He walked through the kitchen during the lunch rush. Luis stood at the grill, spatula working smooth and easy, whistling. Actually whistling like he had something to be happy about. Something funny I should know about. Luis didn't stop his work, didn't lose the tune. No, jefe, just a good day. Sun's shining. Food's cooking right. Can't complain. We'll see how long that lasts. But the words came out hollow, toothless. Luis just kept whistling. Grant retreated to his office, closed the door, sat at his desk staring at that background check for the 100th time. $847 million. The old man was dismantling everything with nothing but coffee and courtesy and $10 tips on $6 meals. His phone buzzed. His mother again. "Please, honey, just let me know you're all right. I'm praying for you." He deleted the message. Couldn't stomach hearing the hope in her voice when there was nothing left inside him worth hoping for. His reflection stared back from the dark computer screen. Hollow eyes, jaw so tight his teeth ached clear up to his temples. When had his face started looking like this? When had he started looking like the kind of man who'd frame a single mother for theft? That evening, 9:30, last customers trickling out, staff finishing their closing duties. Silas sat at the counter nursing his final cup of coffee, taking his time like always. Grant walked out from the back, crossed straight to him. "We need to talk." Silas looked up, calm as Sunday morning. "All right. My office, now." "Lead the way." They walked through the dining room. Luis watched from the kitchen window. Maribel stopped wiping down tables. Jenny's eyes tracked them all the way to the back hallway. Grant's office, cramped, cluttered with papers and old coffee cups. That framed photo of his father. Glass still cracked across the corner. Grant closed the door, leaned against it, arms crossed. "Who are you?" Silas settled into the chair across from the desk. Relaxed. At ease. "Told you already. Just a customer." "That's horseshit." Grant's voice went hard. "You show up every single day. Tip like you're trying to prove something. You've turned my whole staff against me. Haven't turned anyone. Just treated them decent. Why? Why not?" Grant slammed his palm on the desk. Papers jumped. His coffee mug rattled in its ring stain. "Because normal people don't act like that. Nobody tips 50% on coffee. Nobody gives a damn what the busboy's name is. Nobody." His voice cracked. He stopped, breathing hard, face flushed red. "Nobody. What?" Silas's tone stayed level. Gentle, even. Grant's hands shook. He gripped the desk edge to still them. "Why are you really here?" Silas studied him for a long moment, past the anger, down to the wound festering underneath. My wife Mary used to work here, 40 years back. She told me once this place saved her life when she had nothing. And when she finally had something, she spent every spare minute trying to save it back. Now she's gone. So I'm finishing what she started. Grant's throat went tight. You're trying to save this diner. No, son. I'm trying to save you. The words landed like a fist to the solar plexus. Grant's breath stopped. You don't know anything about me. I know you got fired from Whitfield Industries in 2015 for something you didn't do. I know your daddy died 3 weeks later. I know you think the world murdered him for being honest, and I know you're trying to prove you're not a victim by making victims out of everyone else. Grant's face went white, then red. His vision tunneled. How do you? Because I owned Whitfield, bought it in 2018, found the audit reports, found out Roger Dalton stole that money and blamed you, found out you were innocent and nobody bothered to tell you, and I am genuinely sorry for that. The room tilted sideways. Grant grabbed for the desk, missed, caught himself on the chair arm, sat down hard. You're Silas Rowan. The Silas Rowan. Just Silas. Why didn't you say something? Wanted to see what kind of man you'd become when nobody was watching. Grant looked up, eyes wet and red. And now you know. Yeah, I do. No comfort, no softening, just the truth sitting there between them, cold and hard. I wanted to be nothing like the people who killed my father. Grant's voice came out strangled. But I became exactly them. Worse than them. Silas didn't argue, didn't tell him he was wrong. So what now? Grant's hands lay limp in his lap. You fire me. Don't own this place. Can't fire you even if I wanted to. Then why go through all this? Silas stood, put on his jacket, buttoned it slow and deliberate. Because tomorrow morning I'm coming back, and I'm sitting at that counter, and I'm ordering coffee, and you're going to have a choice. He paused at the door. Keep being the man your father would be ashamed of, or start being the man he raised. He opened the door, turned back. Your call, son. He left. Grant sat alone in the fluorescent silence, staring at the cracked photo of his father in that construction helmet, grinning like life was an adventure instead of a burden. His chest heaved once, twice. Then the sobs came ugly, loud, ripping up from somewhere deep in his gut where he'd buried 10 years of rage and grief. He cried until his throat was raw, until his eyes burned, until nothing was left. Then he sat in the quiet, picked up his phone. His mother's text glowed on the screen, 2 hours old. His thumb shook as he pressed call. It rang once, twice. Grant. Her voice, worried and hopeful and heartbroken all at once. Honey, is that you? Hi, Mama. His voice broke on the word. I'm sorry I haven't called. Oh, baby. It's okay. Are you all right? No, Mama. I'm not. He heard her sharp intake of breath. What's wrong? I need to ask you something. His fingers cramped around the phone. Do you think Daddy would be proud of me? Long silence? Painful? Why would you ask that, sweetheart? Just answer. Please. Your daddy loved you more than his own life, and he'd want you to be happy. Are you happy? Grant looked around his office. At the mess, at the bitter coffee gone cold, at the life he'd built from spite and ashes. No, Mama, I'm not. Then change something. Honey, what if it's too late? It's never too late. Your daddy lost 3 jobs before he found steady work, got laid off, got fired twice, but he never stopped trying to be good. They talked for an hour, about his father, about the wrongful firing, about the 10 years Grant had spent punishing the innocent for crimes they didn't commit. When he finally hung up, the bourbon bottle sat on his desk where he'd brought it from home, planning to drink himself stupid after closing. He picked it up, walked to the bathroom, poured that Kentucky bourbon down the sink, watched it spiral away, came back, sat down, opened his laptop, typed, "How to apologize to employees." Read article after article, taking notes until his hand cramped. 2 in the morning, when he finally closed the computer, looked at his father's photo one last time. "I'm going to try, Daddy. Don't know if I can fix what I broke, but I'm going to try." He locked up, walked to his car. The parking lot sat empty except for one vehicle, that faded blue Ford pickup. Engine off now. Dark, but through the windshield Grant could see Silas sleeping, head back, Aurora curled beside him. The old man had waited all night, making sure Grant was all right. Grant stood there with his keys biting into his palm, shame burning through him like acid eating metal. He'd spent 10 years being angry at everyone, and a stranger had shown him more grace in 1 week than he'd shown anyone in a decade. For the first time since his father died, that cold weight pressing on his chest lifted just enough to let him breathe. He didn't feel good. Didn't feel forgiven. But he felt something that might, if he was careful, if he didn't ruin it, turn into hope. 6 in the morning? Staff break room. Before the doors opened to the public, Maribel arrived first, stowed her purse in her locker, pulled on her apron. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like they always did. Coffee pot sat empty, waiting. She started a fresh pot. The machine gurgled and hissed, familiar sounds that marked the beginning of every shift for the past 7 years. Luis came through the door, thermos tucked under his arm, saw the coffee brewing, nodded at her. "Morning." "Morning." Jenny pushed in next, backpack heavy with textbooks, eyes showing the strain of studying until 3 a.m. for her chemistry midterm. Ramon shuffled through last, moving slower today, that hip worse in the cold morning damp. They reached for their usual spots, their usual mugs, falling into the routine they'd repeated 1,000 times. The door opened again. Everyone froze. Grant stood there in the doorway. No tie today, no dress shirt, just jeans and a plain gray t-shirt, worn soft at the collar. His eyes were red-rimmed like he hadn't slept, or like he'd been crying, or both. "Thank you for coming in early." His voice came out rough, scraped raw. "I know you've got families waiting at home. I'll be quick." He took a breath that shuddered in his chest. "I owe all of you an apology." The words hung in the air. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Jenny shifted her weight. "For what?" Grant's jaw worked, muscles jumping under the skin. "For being a terrible manager. For making you feel like you didn't matter. For treating you like you were disposable." He looked directly at Maribel. "For accusing you of theft when I knew you were innocent. I was wrong. Dead wrong. And I'm sorry." Maribel's throat closed. She couldn't make words come out. Grant continued, speaking to all of them now. "My father died unfairly. Lost his job for something he didn't do, and I spent 10 years punishing everyone around me for it. Including you. That's not okay. That's not who he raised me to be." Luis set down his thermos. The metal clinked against the counter. "Senor Grant, I'm not asking you to forgive me. Don't deserve that. But I'm asking for a chance to do better." Silence fell heavy in the small room. Everyone looked at the floor, the walls, their hands, anywhere but at Grant standing there with his soul stripped bare. Ramon cleared his throat. Every head turned toward the old busboy. He spoke slow, each word deliberate, his accent thicker than usual. "My son. He's in prison, Clayton Correctional. 20 years for selling drugs he never touched. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong color skin maybe?" Grant's face went pale. "I work here to pay his lawyer. Every week I send money. Never enough. and I'm angry. Every single day I wake up angry. Ramon's hands gripped the counter edge, knuckles bone white. But I don't put my anger on other people because my anger belongs to me, not to them. He looked at Grant, meeting his eyes straight on. You want to do better? Then start today, right now. Grant nodded, his own eyes filling. Okay, I will. Nobody applauded. Nobody rushed forward with forgiveness. They just stood there, acknowledging what had been said. The coffee pot beeped its completion. Luis moved first, walked past Grant to pour his cup, stopped, put his weathered hand on Grant's shoulder, just for a second, squeezed. Es un comienzo. Jefe, it's a start. Jenny grabbed her apron, tied it on, didn't look at Grant, but didn't avoid him either. Maribel poured her coffee slow, added cream and sugar, stirred while the silence stretched. Ramon picked up his cleaning supplies, walked toward the door, paused in the threshold. Don't make me regret this. I won't, Grant said. I promise. The old man left. Grant stood alone in the break room after the others had gone to their stations. No celebration, no absolution. Just acknowledgement that he'd spoken truth, and truth was a place to start from. He exhaled, long and shaky. More than he deserved, less than he'd hoped for. But something. 8 in the morning. Breakfast rush building. Silas sat at his usual counter spot, coffee steaming in front of him like always. Maribel refilled water glasses at table 6, brought the pitcher back to the service station. Set it down. Can I talk to you when you have a minute? Got time right now. She untied her apron, hung it on the hook. They walked outside together. Morning sun cut through the live oaks, Spanish moss hanging perfectly still in the windless air. Aurora barked once from the truck, tail wagging. Grant apologized to everyone this morning, before we opened. Silas nodded. That's good. Is it words or easy? Anyone can say sorry. Words aren't easy for a man like him. Words like that cost everything he had left. Maribel looked through the window at the diner. Grant stood at the register helping Jenny with a difficult customer, speaking low and calm instead of sharp and cutting. I don't know if I can forgive him. Don't have to. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness is something you give yourself when you're ready, not something you owe anybody else. She turned to face him. You knew this would happen. That's why you kept coming back? Silas pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket, manila, sealed with the flap tucked in. This is for you. What is it? Open it after I leave. Silas? Mary had a dream. Wanted to open a little restaurant. Nothing fancy. Just a place where folks felt like family. She never got the chance. But I think you could make it real. Maribel's hands trembled as she took the envelope. I can't. There's enough in there to get you started. Call it an investment in kindness. He buttoned his jacket against morning chill that wasn't really there. Name it Mary's Table. Make her proud. He walked to his truck, opened the door. Aurora jumped from passenger seat to driver's side. Silas slid in beside her. Wait. Maribel's voice stopped him. You leaving for good? Not for good. Just got some business to attend to, but I'll be back Sunday, if you'll still have me. Table 7 will always be yours. He smiled, lines deepening around his eyes. Then I'll see you Sunday morning. The engine caught, purred smooth. He drove away. Maribel stood in the parking lot holding that envelope, tore it open with shaking fingers. A check fell out. She caught it. $50,000, made out to her name says, signed by Silas Rowan in careful old-fashioned script. Her knees went weak. She leaned against the brick wall, slid down until she sat on the pavement. A note tucked inside, handwritten on cream-colored paper, for Mary's Table, make her proud, S.R. She pressed the check against her chest, sat there on the concrete, cried into her free hand. Different tears than before. Not shame, not fear, the kind that come when you realize you're not drowning anymore. When someone saw you struggling and threw you a rope instead of turning away. Through the window, Grant watched her, saw the check, saw her crying. He turned away, gave her privacy she hadn't asked for but needed. That small grace cost him nothing and meant everything. Lunch rush, 12:30, every table packed. A woman at a table 4 snapped her fingers at Jenny. "Miss, I've been sitting here 10 minutes. Jenny hurried over, face flushed. "I'm so sorry. We're short one server today," and Grant appeared beside her. Calm, present. "Ma'am, I apologize for the wait. Jenny's doing her best and we appreciate your patience. I'll personally make sure your order gets priority." The woman blinked, surprised. "Oh, well, thank you." Grant turned to Jenny, lowered his voice. "You're doing fine. Take a breath." Her shoulders dropped half an inch. "Yes, sir." Kitchen, 2 in the afternoon. After lunch, cleanup. Luis dropped a plate. It shattered across the tile, pieces skittering under the prep station. "Ay, Dios mío." He froze. Bracing for the yelling that always came, Grant pushed through the door, saw the broken plate, the ceramic shards everywhere. Luis's face went tight, waiting for impact. Grant grabbed the broom from the corner, started sweeping. "You cut yourself?" Luis stared. "No. Then it's just a plate. We've got plenty more." He swept the pieces into a neat pile. Luis stood there with his mouth hanging open. "Jefe, you don't need to—" "Yeah, I do." They cleaned it together, side by side. No words necessary. When they finished, Luis looked at Grant. Really looked. "Gracias." Grant nodded, walked back to the dining room. Luis stood in the kitchen holding the dustpan, something shifting in his chest, something small but real. End of shift, 6 p.m. Grant sat at his desk, door standing open, something new, something he'd never done before. Always kept it closed, always separate. Maribel knocked on the frame. "Got a minute?" "Sure, come in." She sat. The check was in her apron pocket. She could feel it there, solid and real. "I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice." Grant's stomach dropped. "Because of me?" "No, because of me. I'm opening my own place." She paused. "And I'd like you to come by sometime. When it's ready." His eyes widened. "You'd want me there. I don't forgive easy, but I believe in second chances. Mary taught me that." She stood, extended her hand across the desk. "Start over." Grant looked at her hand. His own trembled as he reached out. They shook. "Start over." She left. Grant sat alone, staring at the hand that had just shaken hers, the same hand that had falsely accused her of theft 1 week ago. He didn't deserve this, any of it, but people were giving it anyway. His phone buzzed. His mother. "So proud of you for calling last night, honey. Coming to visit next month? Can't wait to see you. Love you so much." He typed back, "Love you too, Mama. Can't wait." Pressed send, set the phone down, looked at his father's cracked photo. "I'm trying, Daddy. Don't know if I can fix everything I broke, but I'm trying." Through the window, last customers left. Staff cleaned their stations, moving easier now. Luis hummed at the grill. Jenny smiled at something Ramon said. The diner felt lighter, like poison draining from a wound. Grant had created that poison, but maybe, just maybe, he could help heal it too. The question burning in his gut, could he heal the poison inside himself, or would it win in the end? 6 months later, late September, sunset painting everything gold. The brick building sat on a quiet Savannah side street, live oaks overhead draped with Spanish moss like gray lace curtains. A hand-painted sign hung above the door, "Mary's Table, where everyone's family." Underneath, in smaller letters, Est 2026, in memory of Mary Rowan. Maribel stood on the sidewalk out front. Blue dress she'd bought special for tonight, hair down around her shoulders for once instead of pulled back in that perpetual bun. Her hands twisted together. Couldn't stay still. Diego stood beside her, 8 years old, in a button-up shirt tucked into his jeans. "It looks real good, Mom." "You think so?" Sophia tugged on Maribel's dress, 5 years old, missing her front tooth. "It looks like home." Cars pulled up. Luis stepped out first, wearing a tie for the first time Maribel had ever seen. Smiled wide when he caught her eye. Jenny arrived next. No textbooks tonight, makeup carefully applied, hair curled. Ramon walked up slow, that hip still giving him trouble, but his spine was straighter than it used to be. Another car. Grant climbed out holding flowers, yellow sunflowers, bright as summer. Maribel's breath caught in her throat. He walked over, extended them toward her. "Congratulations. You came. Wouldn't have missed it." More people arrived, neighbors from her apartment building. Mrs. Louise Carter in her Sunday dress despite it being Thursday evening. Mrs. Carter pulled Maribel into a hug, held tight. "Baby, I am so proud of you. Thank you for everything. Hush, now. This is your night." Music started inside, soft jazz drifting through the open door, piano and upright bass. Maribel looked down the empty street. No faded blue pickup truck. "He's not here." Luis touched her shoulder. "Who you waiting on?" "Silas." An engine sound, familiar as breathing. Everyone turned. The old Ford rolled up, parked at the curb. Silas climbed out wearing a suit had to be 40 years old, but clean and pressed. Aurora beside him on her leash, tail wagging. He walked up the sidewalk, taking his time, taking it all in. "Sorry, I'm late. Had to find my good jacket." Maribel hugged him, held on tight. "You came." "Told you I would." She led him inside. Wooden tables, white tablecloths, red checkered napkins at each place setting. Photos covered the walls, old Savannah. Families laughing, children playing, and in the center, largest of all Mary's picture from 1978, young and smiling. Sunflowers tucked behind her ear. In the corner by the window table, 7. Reserved sign propped on top, Mary's table. Silas stopped walking. His hand went to his chest, pressed flat over his heart. "I saved it for you. Thought you'd want to sit there." His voice came out thick and rough. "That's real kind of you." He sat. Aurora lay at his feet, head on her paws. The restaurant filled with people, laughter, voices mixing with silverware clinking, life happening all around. Grant approached the table, stopped a respectful distance away. "Mr. Rowan." "Just Silas. I wanted to thank you for not giving up on me when you should have. Didn't do it for thanks. I know, but I'm giving it anyway." Silence settled between them, comfortable instead of tense. "I've been taking night classes, business ethics at the community college. Figured it was time I learned how to do this right." Silas nodded. "That's good. Real good. And I'm talking to my mama again. Regular. She's coming down next month to visit." "I bet she's proud of you." Grant's throat worked, swallowing hard. "She says my daddy would be too. I hope she's right. Son, you're here, you're trying. That's all any father can ask." Grant's eyes filled. He blinked fast, nodded once, walked away before the tears could fall. The evening moved like honey, slow and sweet. People ate, talked, stayed longer than they'd planned. The kind of place where time felt different, where you remembered what mattered. Around 8, most folks had headed home. Staff cleaned quietly, letting the moment breathe. Maribel untied her apron, walked to table 7 where Silas still sat nursing coffee. Mind if I join you? Would be honored. She sat across from him. 2 plates on the table, 2 sets of silverware, 1 plate empty and clean, the other untouched. Set for the chair nobody sat in. I made her favorite, herb-crusted steak, just like she used to order. Silas looked at that uneaten plate set for Mary's ghost. She'd have loved it. I left it for her, that strange, not strange at all. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that feels like peace instead of absence. Can I ask you something? Anything. Do you think she knows about all this? Silas looked at the empty chair, at Mary's photo on the wall, at the restaurant full of people who'd been strangers 6 months ago and were family now. I think she's been here the whole time. I think she brought me back that first night. And I think she's smiling right now, proud as can be. You really believe that? Have to. Otherwise, what was the point of loving someone so deep if they just disappear when they're gone? Maribel's eyes burned. She blinked, wiped at them with her napkin. But I'll tell you what I know for certain, sure. Silas leaned forward. She's alive in you, in how you chose courage when fear was easier, in how you built something beautiful from pain. That's not gone. That's forever. Her voice came out whisper soft. Thank you. For everything. Thank you for letting me be part of it. Aurora barked once, sharp and insistent. Silas laughed, the sound rusty but real. All right, girl, time to head home. He stood, put on his jacket, buttoned it against evening chill, picked up his hat from the chair, actual fedora. Gray felt, from another era, and settled it on his head. Will you come back every Sunday morning, if you'll have me? Table 7 will always be yours. He tipped his hat at her, old-fashioned and courtly. At the door, he turned back. You know what Mary used to tell me? What the best revenge against a hard world is to stay soft anyway. He left. The door closed gentle behind him. Maribel sat alone at table 7, looked at the empty chair, at Mary's photograph, smiling down. Thank you, Mary, for sending him, for teaching me, for everything. The candle on the table flickered in some draft nobody could feel, then steadied, burning bright. Maribel smiled. 9 at night. Savannah streets quiet under street lamps. Silas drove with the windows down. Aurora in the passenger seat. Jazz playing low on the radio. Spanish moss hung like memories from the live oaks. Streetlights painting everything amber. He passed Rosie's diner, still lit up inside. Through the window, Grant talking with his evening staff, actually smiling, the hard edges worn down to something softer. Silas nodded at the sight, kept driving. His cottage appeared around the bend, small, blue paint peeling but sturdy, white trim, rocking chairs on the porch. He parked, sat in the truck cab, Aurora waiting patient beside him. Your mama would have liked tonight. She always said you don't change the world with grand gestures. You change it with small kindnesses that pile up like snowflakes until you've got enough to bury the meanness. I think we did that. Aurora licked his weathered hand. He climbed out. Aurora following. They walked to the door together. Inside photographs covering every wall. Mary in every single frame. Young, old, in between, all of them showing her smile. He walked to their wedding photo, 1980. Both of them impossibly young, impossibly sure. 46 years, sweetheart. 46 years since you said yes to a broke carpenter who couldn't afford a proper ring. He touched the frame, fingertips gentle on the glass. I miss you, every blessed day, but I'm doing what you asked, staying soft when the world wants me hard. He settled into his armchair, brown leather worn to his shape after 30 years. Aurora curled at his feet, chin on his boot. On the side table, 2 receipts. One, yellowed and fragile, Rosie's Diner, October 12, 1983. Total $8.47. Next to it, New and crisp Mary's table, grand opening, paid in full. Silas picked them both up, held them together. Full circle, Mary, we came full circle. He set them down careful, closed his eyes, breathed deep. His chest rose, fell, rose again. Aurora's tail thumped soft against the floor. Outside, the Georgia night settled in. Crickets singing, distant traffic humming, the world continuing its ancient rhythm. Inside, an old man sat in his chair. Not alone, never truly alone, because love doesn't end when the heart stops beating. It just finds new hands to hold, new hearts to fill. And every act of kindness is an echo of everyone who loved you. Every moment of grace is a ripple spreading outward. Every choice to stay soft when the world demands you harden is a revolution so quiet you might miss it. Unless you're watching close. Unless you're paying attention. Unless you understand that real power doesn't announce itself, it whispers. And the whisper says, try again, do better, love anyway. At Mary's table, lights went out one by one. Maribel locked the door, walked to her car where Diego and Sophia slept in the back seat, peaceful and full. She looked back at her restaurant, her dream, Mary's legacy, her second chance. Table 7 sat in shadow, reserved sign still visible, candles still burning behind protective glass. For Mary, for everyone who'd ever felt invisible, for everyone who'd ever needed to be seen. The flame danced, small and steady, refusing to go out. There's something quiet that settles in after a story like this ends. Not resolved, not wrapped up neat, just sitting there with you, maybe heavy, maybe tender. The kind of weight that doesn't hurt, just reminds you it's real. Many of us have known what it feels like to walk into a room and have nobody see you, to wonder if kindness still exists, or if we just imagined it back when the world felt different. Some of us have been Silas carrying grief and choosing to turn it into something soft instead of something sharp. Some of us have been Grant wounded deep and lashing out because the pain had nowhere else to go. Perhaps you've been Maribel caught between keeping your job and doing right, knowing what silence costs, remembering the weight of it. These stories don't need to teach us anything. They're allowed to just be, to sit here, unresolved, the way real life often is. Nobody's fully healed, nobody's perfectly fixed, just people trying, failing, trying again, learning that being soft doesn't mean being weak, and maybe that's enough. Thank you for staying. Thank you for listening.